The heat of the moment has got to be one of the absolute worst moments to be making critical decisions. And I almost fell victim to this just a few weeks ago. As the pandemic clicked into place, on March 11th is when everything I think really became very real in North America. The NBA shut down that night, the NHL shut down that night. Billion-dollar sports leagues shutting down is a major, major sign that this is a very serious issue, and irrespective of whether you believe that the government responded well or not, or whether we were prepared or not, or any of those opinion pieces, the bottom line is that humans were going to react in a dramatic fashion, and that we have. I'm no exception. I started to get fairly concerned, and that was when I knew that I needed to put into play my kind of like stress management system. And on top of that, I also knew that, so I made sure that I had my diet in check, my exercise in check, I had ways to manage stress, all that was in check. I also knew that I needed to also put into play trigger points. So if this pandemic was going to negatively affect my business, what were the key trigger points or milestones that if we hit that level, I would need to start making take some significant action and possibly make some tough decisions. So I had set one of my trigger points that one of our products, if it didn't sell for 2 straight weeks, that I would have to have what would be probably a fairly uncomfortable conversation with my team. And so, as you know, in 2 weeks, there's 10 business days. And so I'm thinking, okay, 10 days, that's kind of the time frame here. So the whole first week went by, we didn't sell anything of this one product. And I just thought to myself, oh my goodness, all right, don't worry about it, Tim, it's only 1 week. So then the next day goes by, so it's now day 6 out of 10, and we still hadn't sold anything. I'm thinking, ooh, I'm starting to get nervous. Day 7 went by, and now I'm starting to go oh my goodness, this might actually have to happen, that I have to have this uncomfortable conversation. Day 8 happens, and still no sales of this one particular product, and I am now losing sleep. And I am getting emotional, and I'm oh my God, what's gonna happen? And day 9 comes, I'm journaling out tons, feeling so much stress, and still making sure I'm on top of meditating and working out and all the rest, so that I can, at bare minimum, have my best physiological self for the situation. Day 10 comes, I wake up that morning and I'm just oh my God, it's a foregone conclusion. I've got no choice. This is not a question of if, it's a question of when, and this very uncomfortable conversation is going to happen. And at this point, I've gone from being scared to almost being resigned, oh my God, this is not going to be good. So I'd picked a specific time on day 10 of when that trigger would fire, that I would have to pick up the phone and have this conversation. And 22 minutes before my trigger time, 22 minutes. So we'd gone 9.9 days into this 10-day window, and suddenly a sale comes through on this particular product. And I'm just thinking you can't be serious. And because we made the sale, the trigger phone call never happened. So what's really wild about this story is the very next week, we sold $20,000 of that particular product. So what it really helped me relearn, because I've had to learn this lesson a few times now, is that the heat of the moment is the worst moment to be making decisions. As it is, we as human beings have a tough time really seeing accurately where we're at. It's just because we're all full of biases and whatnot. It's almost as if we're standing in a jar and we can't see the label on the outside of the jar. Now, it gets even worse because when stress and pressure mounts, it's we're standing in the jar and there's all this fog in the jar and we can't see the label on the outside. So it just becomes compounded, vagueness on top of emotion, on top of overwhelm, and it's just not a productive place to be. So I think the lesson here is the best time to be making decisions is before we're in the heat of the moment. And it begs the question, well, Tim, what if I already am in the heat of the moment? What if I am overwhelmed? Well, if you're already overwhelmed, it's almost impossible to be clear-minded about our own situation. And so we need to reach out. We need to reach out to trusted advisors. It could be friends or mentors, people who've gone through these kinds of situations before, to get their perspective. Because even though you may be overwhelmed, maybe they're not. And maybe this advisor or mentor or friend who's skilled at entrepreneurship can give you some perspective at a time when you're just splashed around trying to keep your head above water. Getting clear on your trigger points, there's a little bit of an art and a science to it. And I think that one of the most powerful tools that helps us to figure out our trigger points is something called a cash flow forecast. And I can actually give you a template to follow. All you need to do is jump into this great training I'm doing. It's coming up in a handful of days. It's called Navigate the Cash Crunch. And in the Navigate the Cash Crunch training, which is a simple 90-minute online course that I teach live, so you'll be able to ask me real-world questions, I give you my 3-point plan for navigating any cash crunch. And by the end of that, you'll know how to create your own clarity and cash roadmap so that you know where your trigger points are, when you need to take corrective action, and when you can relax and just stay the course. Head over to navigatethecashcrunch.com and check out when the next date is for our next webinar. And I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you so much.